You know what the worst part about war is? It's not the dying. It's the waiting. I was there when it happened. Well, not right there, but close enough. Close enough to feel it in my bones when everything changed. My name's Marcus Webb, and 11 years ago I was just another kid from Detroit who thought joining the Terran Defense Force would be an adventure. Turns out, adventure is just another word for watching your friends die in the cold vacuum of space while golden ships tear through your hull like paper. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up. The war started when I was 17. The Krell showed up on a Tuesday. Isn't that weird? The end of human civilization as we knew it kicked off on a Tuesday afternoon. I remember because I was supposed to have a history test that day. Never took it. Instead, I watched the news feeds with my mom in our cramped apartment, watching those beautiful, terrible ships appear around Mars. They looked like needles made of light. That's the best way I can describe them. Long and sleek and golden, like someone took the concept of a knife and made it float. There were hundreds of them at first. Then thousands. Then so many you couldn't count them all. The Krell didn't negotiate. They didn't make demands. They just started taking our worlds, one by one, like someone checking items off a grocery list. Mars fell in 3 days. The Europa colonies lasted a week. Titan held out for almost a month, but that was only because the Krell seemed to be in no particular hurry. See, that's what made them so scary. They weren't angry or cruel or even particularly interested in us. They were just efficient, cold, mechanical. Later we'd learn they were a hive mind, all connected across light years like one giant brain. But back then we just knew they were unstoppable. I signed up on my 18th birthday. Mom cried. She knew what it meant. Everyone knew what it meant by then. The Terran Defense Force wasn't about defense anymore. It was about buying time. Time for what nobody really knew. But we fought anyway because that's what humans do. We're stubborn like that. Basic training was supposed to be 6 months. They crammed it into 6 weeks. There wasn't time for anything else. By the time they shipped me out to the Kuiper Belt outposts, I'd learned how to pilot a fighter, patch a hull breach, and say goodbye to people I'd never see again. Those were the 3 essential skills for the war. The Kuiper Belt became humanity's last line. Everything behind us was either dead or dying. Earth was still there, still blue and beautiful when you could see it through the debris fields, but it was surrounded. The Krell 6th Fleet had 8,000 capital ships blockading our sun. 8,000. I can't even make you understand how big that number is. Each one of those ships could take out a city. Together, they were a wall of gold between us and home. We had maybe 200 ships left that could still fight. 200 against 8,000. And somehow, we were still fighting. The Pluto Forward Command was where I spent most of the war. It wasn't much to look at, just a collection of HAB modules and weapons platforms bolted to a chunk of ice that somebody named Pluto a long time ago. But it was ours, and we held it. Commander Sarah Vance ran the station. She wasn't an admiral back then, just a commander who refused to give up. She was maybe 40, with gray in her hair that wasn't there when the war started and eyes that had seen too much. But she never quit. Not once in 11 years did I see her even consider it. I remember one night, well, we called it night even though it's always dark out there, sitting in the mess hall with my squad. There were 5 of us left out of the original 20. Jackson, who never stopped cracking jokes even when half his face was covered in burn scars. Reeves, who'd been a teacher before the war and kept trying to teach us stuff during downtime. Yuki, who was the best pilot I ever saw and refused to talk about where she came from. Chen, who'd lost his entire family when Beijing got hit and fought like he had nothing to lose because, well, he didn't. And me. Just a kid from Detroit who'd somehow survived 3 years in hell. You think we'll ever see Earth again? Jackson asked, pushing around the gray protein paste that passed for food. Sure, Reeves said. He always said sure. Any day now we're going to turn this whole thing around. Nobody believed him. But nobody said so either. Hope was like water in the desert, you didn't waste it. That's when Commander Vance came into the mess. She looked worse than usual, which was saying something. Dark circles under her eyes. Uniform rumpled. She didn't sit down, just stood there looking at all of us. We got new orders from Mars Command, she said quietly. Too quietly. We all stopped eating. New orders usually meant somebody was about to die. They're pulling resources. All of them. Every ship, every spare part, every engineer. They're funneling everything into some kind of project. What kind of project? Chen asked. Vance shook her head. Above my clearance. Above everybody's clearance except maybe 10 people in the whole system. But they're calling it Black Hole Sunday. I felt cold. Colder than the vacuum outside. That's a weapon, right? Has to be. They're building some kind of super weapon. That's what I figure, Vance said. One last shot. Either it works or we're done. How long? Yuki asked. 2 years. Maybe less if they can speed it up. 2 years. We all did the math in our heads. 2 years with what we had left. It wasn't possible. The Krell were grinding us down by the day. We were losing ships, losing people, losing everything. 2 years might as well have been 200. But what else were we going to do? Quit? Then we hold for 2 years, Vance said, and walked out. We held. God help us, we held. Year 9 turned into year 10. We lost the Herschel station. We lost the Make outpost. We lost so many good people I stopped learning names because it hurt too much when they didn't come back. The Krell kept pushing, kept surrounding us, kept that golden wall of ships between us and everything we loved. But we held. I made it to sergeant somehow. Not because I was special, just because I'd survived longer than most. I had my own squad by then. New faces. Kids even younger than I'd been. I tried not to get attached. Didn't always work. There were moments that made it worth it. Like when Jackson managed to rig an old Krell fighter to play music through its comm system. For about 3 hours before they found it and blew it up, we had classic rock echoing across the battlefield. The Krell probably didn't know what to make of it. Hell, I'm not sure we did either. But for 3 hours we got to remember what it felt like to be human instead of just soldiers. Or the time Reeves organized a poker night and somehow convinced Commander Vance to join. She won every hand. Turned out she'd been counting cards the whole time. We lost a month's worth of rations to her, and she donated it all to the new recruits. Never said a word about it, but we knew. Or when Chen finally smiled. It took 7 years, but we were on patrol and we saw Earth through a gap in the debris field. Just for a moment. Just a flash of blue. And Chen smiled. He never talked about it, but I saw it. These were the moments that kept us going. Not the big speeches or the strategic victories. Just the small, human things that reminded us what we were fighting for. Year 11 started like all the others. Cold. Desperate. By then, we'd all heard rumors about Black Hole Sunday. Some people said it was a bomb big enough to crack a planet. Others said it was a fleet of ghost ships that could phase through Krell shields. There was even a rumor it was a time machine, that we were going to go back and stop the war before it started. Nobody knew for sure. But we knew it was close. We could feel it. There was a tension in the air, like the whole universe was holding its breath. I was on a patrol run with my squad when it happened. Day 4012 of the war. I remember the number because everyone remembers that number now. It's the most important date in human history. We were doing a sweep near Neptune, checking for Krell scouts. It was routine. Everything was routine by then. We'd been doing the same dance with them for so long it felt almost normal. That's when Yuki's scanner went haywire. What the hell, she muttered, tapping her console. I'm getting ghost readings all over the place. Define ghost readings, I said. Empty space. No heat signatures. No gravity wells. No nothing. But 3 seconds ago there were definitely Krell ships here. I checked my own scanner. She was right. There were gaps in the Krell formation. Big gaps. Ships that had been there were just gone. Probably sensor malfunction, Jackson said. This bucket's been held together with duct tape and prayers for the last 6 months. But then the emergency channel crackled to life. It was Commander Vance, and I'd never heard her sound like that before. Not scared, exactly. More like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. All units, return to base immediately. I repeat, all units return to base. Do not engage any targets. Do not investigate anomalies. Just get back here now. We didn't argue. When Vance used that tone, you listened. The flight back to Pluto Forward Command felt like it took forever. Nobody talked. We were all checking our scanners, watching more and more empty spaces appear where Krell ships should have been. When we docked, the station was chaos. People running everywhere. Shouting. Some crying. I grabbed a tech named Morrison. "What's happening?" He looked at me with wide eyes. "They're gone. All of them. 8,000 ships. The whole 6th Fleet. Just gone." I didn't understand. Gone where? That's just it. They didn't go anywhere. They're just not there anymore. We found Commander Vance on the command deck. She was staring at the main display, which showed the entire Sol system. Or rather, what the Sol system looked like without 8,000 Krell ships cluttering it up. "Tell me this is real," someone said. Vance didn't look away from the screen. "We've checked everything 3 times. No sensor errors. No system glitches. The Krell fleet is gone. Not just here. Everywhere." Every Krell ship in the Sol system vanished at exactly the same moment. The room went silent. You could have heard a pin drop in the vacuum of space. "Black hole sun," I whispered. Vance nodded slowly. "Has to be. Whatever they built, it worked." "Where did the ships go?" "Us." Nobody answered because nobody knew. The next few days were surreal. We kept waiting for it to be a trick. Some kind of Krell strategy we didn't understand. But the scanners stayed clear. The golden ship stayed gone. And slowly, carefully, we started to believe. Earth sent up a message on the 3rd day. Just 3 words, but they meant everything. "Come home now." I cried. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I sat down in my fighter's cockpit and cried like a baby. 11 years. 11 years of fighting and dying and watching friends disappear into the dark. And suddenly it was over. But it wasn't over. Not really. Because we didn't know what had happened or if it would last. We'd won, but we didn't know how. And that scared me more than the Krell ever did. The answer came from Mars. A broadcast from the Black Hole Sun facility. They called it a press conference, but it was really a confession. Dr. Elizabeth Chin, no relation to my Chin, stood in front of the cameras. She looked exhausted, haunted even. She was one of the lead scientists on the project. "We didn't build a weapon," she said, and the whole solar system leaned in to listen. "We built a signal. A very specific signal." She explained it all. How they discovered the Krell were a hive mind. How the hive mind worked on something called precognitive fold space. How the Krell were literally thinking a fraction of a second into the future, which is why they always seemed one step ahead. "We realized we couldn't beat them with conventional weapons," Dr. Chin said. "They would always see it coming. Always be ready. So we had to give them something they couldn't predict. Something that didn't follow any rules they understood." She paused, and I swear she looked right at the camera. Right at all of us who'd been fighting out there in the dark. We gave them humanity. The signal, she explained, was a massive broadcast of human consciousness. Dreams. Memories. Emotions. Everything that makes us human, all the chaos and contradiction and beautiful mess of it. They'd collected it from 8 billion people and compressed it into a single burst of data, then fired it directly into the Krell hive mind. To a species that exists in perfect synchronization, Dr. Chin said, human consciousness is like poison. Not because it's harmful, but because it's incomprehensible. Imagine trying to process 8 billion separate thoughts, all contradicting each other, all pulling in different directions. Imagine trying to predict the future when every possible future is equally valid and equally impossible. The Krell couldn't handle it. Their entire system crashed. And because they all existed in the same fold space, when one ship system crashed, they all did. 8,000 ships, all trying to exist in different timelines at once, all being pulled apart by the sheer weight of human thought. They didn't die, Dr. Chin said quietly. We didn't kill them. We just pushed them out. Into the space between spaces. The nowhere place where time doesn't exist. I watched that broadcast 3 times. Trying to understand. Trying to process what it meant. We'd won. Not because we were stronger or smarter or better armed. We'd won because we were more chaotic. More unpredictable. More human. It was the most beautiful and terrifying thing I'd ever heard. The brass started organizing salvage operations within a week. We found one Krell scout ship drifting near Jupiter. Just one out of 8,000. Somehow it had made it back. Commander Vance, Admiral Vance by then, they'd promoted her, led the boarding team. I wasn't there, but I heard about it from Jackson, who heard it from someone who was. The ship was intact. Everything working. But the crew was gone. Not dead. Just gone in a way that's hard to explain. They were still sitting at their stations, eyes open, breathing. But nobody was home. Like someone had reached into their heads and flipped the off switch. They're alive, Vance reported back. But there's nothing there. They saw too much. Felt too much. The human consciousness didn't just confuse them. It broke them. We kept that ship. Studied it. Tried to understand what we'd done. But I don't think we ever really did. How do you understand something like that? We'd weaponized our own souls and fired them at the enemy. 3 weeks after the vanishing, they let us come home. I'll never forget the approach to Earth. We'd been staring at it through debris fields and Krell blockades for 11 years, but we'd never been close. Not really close. Now there was nothing between us and that blue marble except empty space and possibility. My hands were shaking on the controls. I couldn't help it. Jackson noticed. "You good, Sarge?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. I wasn't good. I was terrified. What if I didn't fit anymore? What if the kid who'd left Detroit at 18 couldn't find his way back? What if I'd been a soldier for so long I'd forgotten how to be anything else? We landed at Edwards AFB in California. Or what was left of it. The Krell had hit it during year 3, but they'd rebuilt enough to handle incoming ships. As I stepped off the transport, I felt Earth's gravity for the first time in years. Real gravity, not the artificial stuff on stations. My knees almost buckled. The air smelled like dust and oil, and underneath it all, something green. Something alive. I stood there breathing it in like I'd never breathed before. There was a crowd. Not huge, but enough. People holding signs. Some were looking for family members who'd served. Others just wanted to see the soldiers who'd held the line. An old woman caught my eye. She was holding a picture of someone in uniform. Young guy. Couldn't have been more than 20 in the photo. She saw me looking and walked over. "Did you know my son? Daniel Reeves?" My heart stopped. My Reeves, who'd been a teacher and kept trying to educate us even in the middle of a war. Who died 6 months ago when a Krell fighter wing caught his patrol off guard. "Yes, ma'am," I said quietly. I knew him. He was my friend. Her face crumpled, but she didn't cry. She just nodded. Was he brave? I thought about how to answer that. About all the ways Reeves had been brave that had nothing to do with combat. "He was the bravest man I ever met," I said. "He never lost his humanity. Not once in all those years. He kept us human when we were forgetting how." She hugged me then. This stranger who'd lost her son to the war hugged me like I was him, and I hugged her back and pretended I wasn't crying. That's what coming home was like. 1,000 small moments of grief and relief all mixed together until you couldn't tell which was which. They put us up in hotels at first. Real hotels with real beds and real food. I couldn't sleep. The bed was too soft. The room was too quiet. I kept waiting for alarms, for the sound of Krell ships, for something to go wrong. It took me 3 nights before I finally passed out from exhaustion. When I woke up, there was a message on my data pad. From my mom. She was alive. She'd made it through 11 years on an Earth under siege, and she was alive. I called her immediately. Didn't even think about what time it was. "Marcus." Her voice. Got her voice. I'd almost forgotten what it sounded like. "Hey, Mom." She sobbed. Just openly sobbed, and I couldn't say anything because I was doing the same thing. We stayed on that call for 2 hours, not really saying anything important. Just talking. Just being there. "Come home," she finally said. "Please come home." "I will," I promised. "Soon as they let me." But they didn't let me. Not right away. Because the war might have been over, but the work was just beginning. Admiral Vance called us all in for a briefing a week after we landed. We met in a conference room that used to be part of the original mission control for the Apollo program. There was history in those walls. I tried not to think about how we'd almost lost all of it. "I'll cut to the chase," Vance said. She looked better. Still tired, but better. Like she'd finally let herself believe it was over. We need volunteers. The Krell Empire might be gone from Sol System, but there are still outposts. Still ships in distant systems. Still questions about what the hell we just did. She pulled up a star map. Red dots scattered across it like blood drops. These are confirmed Krell positions. As far as we can tell, they're all retreating. Running scared. But we need to know for sure. We need to understand what we're dealing with. And we need to make sure they never come back. So you want us to go after them, Chin said. He'd been quiet since we got back. Quieter than usual. I want volunteers to join reconnaissance missions. Not combat. Just recon. We need to know what's out there. I raised my hand. So did Jackson. Yuki. Chin. Most of the room actually. Vance smiled. It was small and sad, but it was real. I had a feeling you'd say that. The missions started a month later. Small ships, small crews. We were hunters now instead of prey. It felt weird. I was assigned to the scout ship Persistence with a crew of 8. Our mission was simple. Jump to the outer rim, check the old Krell territories, report back. 3 months out, 3 months back. We found things out there. Strange things. The first Krell station we checked was abandoned. Not destroyed. Just empty. Like everyone had gotten up from their posts and walked away. Food was still in the synthesizers. Equipment was still running. But no Krell. Where did they go? Our pilot asked. Nobody knew. They just left. Pulled out and vanished into deep space. The second station was different. We detected life signs, so we approached carefully. But when we boarded, we found something that made my skin crawl. There were Krell there. Maybe 20 of them. But they weren't working. They weren't doing anything. They were just standing in a circle, perfectly still, their eyes open but vacant. Like the ones on the scout ship near Jupiter. They're broken, our medic whispered. Whatever that signal did to them, it's permanent. We tried to communicate, tried to help them. But there was nothing we could do. They were alive but not living. Breathing but not thinking. The human consciousness had shattered something fundamental in their hive mind, and it couldn't be put back together. We left them there. What else could we do? Over the next few months, we found the same thing at every Krell position. Abandoned stations. Broken soldiers. Ships drifting in the dark with crews that couldn't remember how to fly them. The Krell Empire hadn't been defeated. It had been traumatized. And I didn't know how to feel about that. When we got back to Earth, I tried to explain it to the debrief team. Tried to make them understand what we'd seen. They're scared, I said. They're scared of us. Of what we did. Of what we are. The intelligence officer nodded. We're getting similar reports from all recon teams. The Krell are calling us something in their language. Best translation we have is, the loud ones. The loud ones? I kind of like that. They're not coming back, the officer continued. All their remaining fleets have pulled back to the far side of the galaxy. They've put every system they can between them and us. It's like they've quarantined the entire local cluster just to avoid us. We'd won. Really, truly won. Not just the battle, but the war. The whole war. So why did I feel so empty? I got my discharge papers in month 8. Honorable discharge with full benefits and a medal I didn't deserve. They had a ceremony and everything. Admiral Vance pinned the medal on my chest herself. You held the line when nobody else could, she said quietly, just for me. Don't ever forget that. I went home to Detroit after that. The city had changed. Parts of it were still wrecked from when the Krell had hit it in year 2. But parts had been rebuilt. New buildings rising from the ashes of the old. New people moving in. New life. My mom's apartment was the same. Same cramped rooms. Same view of the river. Same everything. I stood in the doorway and just stared. I kept it like it was, Mom said. In case you came back. I'm back, I said, and she hugged me like she'd never let go. Readjusting was hard. Harder than fighting in some ways. I'd wake up in the middle of the night reaching for weapons that weren't there. I'd flinch at loud noises. I'd see Krell ships in my peripheral vision that weren't real. The VA set me up with a therapist. Dr. Sarah Kim. She was good. Patient. She'd served too in the medical corps, so she understood. You're not broken, she told me during our third session. You're processing. There's a difference. I don't feel like I'm processing. I feel like I'm drowning. That's normal. You spent 11 years in survival mode. Your brain is still trying to figure out that the thread is gone. It takes time. Everyone kept saying that. Give it time. Be patient. It'll get better with time. And you know what? They were right. Slowly, gradually, it did get better. I got a job at a reconstruction site. Physical labor. Building new homes for people who'd lost theirs. It felt good to make something instead of destroying things. To use my hands for creation instead of combat. I reconnected with Jackson. He'd moved to New Seattle, was working as a mechanic. Still making jokes. Still making people smile. We'd video call every few weeks, talk about nothing and everything. Yuki disappeared. Last I heard, she'd taken a ship and just started exploring. I spent 11 years staring at the same stars, she told me before she left. Time to see some new ones. Chen was harder. He'd gone back to what was left of Beijing. Tried to rebuild his family's home. But the grief was too much. He took his own life 6 months after the war ended. I went to his funeral. There weren't many people there. Just a handful of soldiers who'd known him. We stood in the rain and remembered a man who'd lost everything but kept fighting anyway. He held on as long as he could, Jackson said quietly. Sometimes surviving the war is the easy part. I thought about that a lot. About how many of us had survived the fighting only to lose ourselves in the peace. But there were good stories too. Admiral Vance retired and started a school for war orphans. Taught them history and strategy and, most importantly, hope. Last I heard, she was happy. Dr. Elizabeth Chin, the scientist who'd led Project Black Hole Sun, won the Nobel Prize. She donated the prize money to victim relief funds. In her acceptance speech, she said something I'll never forget. We didn't win because we were stronger. We won because we refused to become what we were fighting. We stayed human, even when it would have been easier not to. The first anniversary of the vanishing was declared a global holiday. They called it Liberation Day. There were parades and speeches and celebrations. I stayed home. Didn't feel like celebrating. But the second anniversary was different. By then I'd started to heal. Started to believe I might actually be okay. So I went to the ceremony in Detroit. There was a memorial wall. Names carved in black granite. Every person who'd died in the war. Millions of names. I found Reeves's name. Touched it gently. We made it, I whispered. Your mom's doing okay. Thought you'd want to know. A little girl tugged on my sleeve. Couldn't have been more than 6. Did you fight in the war? She asked. Yeah, I said. I did. Were you scared? I thought about lying. About saying no, I was brave, I was fearless. But she deserved the truth. Every single day, I said. But I fought anyway. We all did. She thought about that. My teacher says the ships vanished because humans are special. Are we special? I knelt down to her level. You know what makes us special? We're loud. We're messy. We contradict ourselves. We feel too much and think too much, and we never, ever give up. The universe likes things to be orderly and predictable. We're the opposite of that. And sometimes, being the opposite is exactly what you need to be. She smiled and ran back to her parents. I stood up and looked at the memorial wall, at all those names. We were the loud ones. The chaotic, unpredictable, beautifully messy loud ones. And we'd screamed so loud the universe had to listen. 5 years after the vanishing, we detected a signal from deep space. It was Krell in origin, but different. Modulated. Careful. Not the confident broadcasts they used to send. It took 3 months to translate. When we finally did, it was short. Just one sentence. We will not approach your star again. It wasn't a treaty. It wasn't an apology. It was a statement of fact. A recognition. An acknowledgement that they'd learned something about us, and they wanted no part of it. We sent back our own message. Also short. Understood. And that was it. The official end of the war. 5 years late, but it didn't matter. It was done. I was on a date when I heard the news. My therapist had finally convinced me to try. Her name was Angela, and she'd lost her husband in the war. We'd met at a survivors group and just sort of clicked. We were sitting in a cafe that used to be rubble and now served the best coffee I'd ever tasted. The news came through on the public feeds. The whole cafe went quiet, then erupted in cheers. Angela looked at me. "How do you feel?" "Relieved," I said. And I meant it. For the first time in 11 years, I felt like I could breathe all the way. She reached across the table and took my hand. "What do you want to do now?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. What did I want? What came after surviving? "I want to live," I said. "Just live. Maybe that's enough." She smiled. "Yeah, maybe it is." 10 years after the vanishing, I married Angela. Had a daughter. Named her Sarah, after Admiral Vance and Dr. Kim. Taught her about the war, but more importantly, taught her about the peace. "Daddy," she asked me once, when she was 7, "what was the scariest part of the war?" I picked her up and sat her on my lap. The scariest part was thinking I might not get to be here. With you. Having this conversation. "But you made it." I did. We all did. The ones who survived, anyway. She hugged me. "I'm glad you made it." "Me too, kiddo. Me too." The galaxy is a big place. Bigger than we ever imagined. And there are things out there in the dark. Things we haven't met yet. Things that might be friendly or might be hostile or might be something we don't have words for yet. But they'll hear about us eventually. About the loud ones. About the humans who looked into the abyss and screamed so loud the abyss blinked. And maybe they'll think twice before coming for Earth. Or maybe they won't. Maybe someone out there is even louder than us. Even messy. Even more chaotic. Bring on. We've been to hell and back. We've weaponized our own consciousness. We've turned our greatest weakness into our greatest strength. We're human. We're chaotic. We're unpredictable. And we're not going anywhere. I think about the war a lot. About the people we lost. About the price we paid. About whether it was worth it. And I look at my daughter playing in the garden. At the blue sky overhead, free of golden ships. At Angela reading on the porch. At the world we rebuilt from ashes. It was worth it. Every single day of it was worth it. Because we're still here. Still loud. Still human. And the stars are ours. The day the 8,000 ships vanished changed everything. It became the defining moment of human history. The day we learned what we really were. Not the strongest species in the galaxy. Not the smartest. Not the most advanced. But the loudest. And in a universe that prizes order and logic and predictability, being loud might just be the most powerful weapon of all. I still see Jackson every year on Liberation Day. We meet at the memorial wall, find Reeves's name, and tell stories. About the war. About the friends we lost. About the lives we've built. You ever wonder what would have happened if they hadn't vanished? Jackson asked me last year. I shook my head. No point wondering. They did vanish. We won. You think they'll ever come back? I thought about those broken Krell soldiers. About the fear in their retreat. About the message they'd sent. No, I said. I don't think they will. We broke something in them. Something that can't be fixed. They'll remember us forever, and they'll stay as far away as they can. Good, Jackson said. Then he grinned. Though I kind of miss having someone to fight. I laughed. You always were crazy. Takes one to know one, Sarge. We stood there for a while, two old soldiers in front of a wall of names. Around us, the city lived. People laughed. Kids played. Life went on. And that's the real victory, isn't it? Not that we won the war, but that we got to have this moment. This peace. This chance to just exist. My therapist told me something once that stuck with me. She said trauma doesn't go away. It becomes part of you. Part of your story. You don't get over it. You learn to carry it. I carry the war with me every day. In my dreams. In my scars. In the way I still check the sky for ships that aren't there. But I also carry the victory. The knowledge that when everything was on the line, humanity didn't break. We bent. We screamed. We bled. But we didn't break. And we never will. That's what I'll tell my daughter when she's old enough to understand. That's what I'll tell my grandchildren, if I'm lucky enough to have them. We are the loud ones. The species that won't shut up. The ones who look at impossible odds and say, watch me. The ones who turn our own chaos into a weapon. The Krell thought they were conquering us. But in the end, we conquered them without firing a shot. We overwhelmed them with the one thing they could never understand, humanity. All of it. The good and the bad. The love and the hate. The hope and the fear. The beautiful, messy, contradictory, impossible chaos of being human. And it was enough. It will always be enough. Because we're not just survivors. We're not just fighters. We're human. And in a universe that tries to make sense of everything, we're the glorious exception that proves every rule. The stars belong to us now. Not because we conquered them, but because we earned them. With blood and tears and stubborn, ridiculous hope. And if anyone else out there in the dark wants to try us, well, they know where to find us. We'll be here, being loud, being messy, being human, and we'll be ready.